So hello and good afternoon. You're very welcome to the latest in our Workplace Wellbeing Ireland live webinar series in partnership with Irish Life Health and AJ Products. So I know I'm starting to sound like a broken record at this stage at the beginning of these webinars, but yet again, I'm really delighted with the amount of registrations that have come through. Here's my intern is trying to join me here. She's gone away. So yeah, we had almost 500 registrations today. So I was a little bit worried actually because the Zoom webinar license that I have is only allows up to 500. But luckily we didn't actually quite breach that. But thanks so much to everyone for tuning in. I appreciate there's a lot going on, a lot of demands on your time. So I really appreciate you tuning in. You may as well join in now. I've been distracted here by my intern, so give her 1 minute. So as always with our webinars, I've tried to make the online experience as interactive as possible, similar to our in-person events. So what can you do to take part? Well, I'm going to launch a few poll questions in just a moment, so you can certainly answer those questions. The chat functionality, you can see that in your taskbar below. So I use that first of all to say hello and tell us where you're listening in, you're watching in from. You can use it to interact with your fellow attendees, so you can still mingle a little bit there and comment on what's going on. And there's also a Q&A function down there in your taskbar. So that's slightly different in that if you put a question in there, only myself and the panelists can see that. So if you'd like to direct a private question to myself, to any of the panelists, you can do that there, and we'll try and get to those questions throughout the webinar. And thanks to everyone who has already submitted questions, by the way. So I have a list here that we'll start working through. Now, does everyone have a cup of tea or coffee? For my own part, I'm going with the water, lemon flavored water, but I did have the coffee earlier. So I'll kick off with a really brief introduction to myself and to the community, and then we'll get straight into our panel discussion. So let me see if I can share my screen here. I've just got a couple of slides. So if you've been before to a webinar, I'm sure you'll know the background, but for those that are new, I'll just do a very quick introduction. So to myself, so I founded a community, Workplace Wellbeing Ireland, and I'll talk a little bit about that in just one moment. I'm also the course director at Tangent and Trinity's Ideas Workspace for the postgraduate certificate in workplace wellness. And we've just finished our first year of the program. The contact hours have just finished. The students have been busy working on their host projects. So we had 7 host organizations submitting real world challenges for the final module for the students to work on. So they had teams of 6 students working on these real world challenges. And we've just finished up with live presentations back to the host organizations. I'm delighted that 2 of the hosts are actually represented today. My partners, Irish Life Health, submitted a really interesting project, as too did Sky Ireland. So now I have all the grading to look forward to over the summer months as well. But a really successful start to the program in Trinity. I'm also the host of the Workwell podcast. So if you like the discussion today, definitely check that out at workwellpodcast.com. It's similar conversations, discussing the return to the workplace, discussing supporting our mental health and well-being, physical health. And parenting actually has been probably the most popular episode to date, parenting from work with Dr. Coleman Noctor. So do check that out, especially if you are trying to juggle the parenting and the homeschooling. And finally, then I wasn't busy enough, so I set up a social enterprise as well, Park Hit. The easiest way to describe it is it's the resistance training equivalent of Park Run. So running, cardiovascular exercise is really important. But equally as important is, resistance and strength exercises. So looking after our bones, our joints, our muscles, particularly as we grow older. So light, free, bodyweight only exercises in local parks in Dublin. So great to be back up and running with that after the lockdown as well. The community itself, so that's why we're here today. It started out, it was in-person events. The whole idea was to bring people together as in a forum to share from our own experiences, what's working, what's not, the challenges we're facing, how are we overcoming them in the areas of workplace well-being. So it's been a really nice forum for that, for bringing people together. Really interesting discussions, some great panelists, great speakers, and really lovely locations as well. Of course, since lockdown, we've gone online, and I think the webinars have been really, really successful, and will certainly be will continue to be a part of the event series, along with some in-person events, I'm sure, when we do get back to some kind of normal. So the events, the webinars, all of that is totally free to attend. And the reason I'm able to keep them free for attendees is with thanks to my partners, my wonderful partners. So Irish Life Health came on board this year, and it's been a real pleasure and a privilege to work with Jacinta and the team at Irish Life Health. So, you know, what a thumbs up for the community to get thought leaders in the areas of workplace well-being on board to support the community. So it's been a real pleasure and a real boost to the community as well to have Irish Life Health on board. And it's been really fascinating to watch over the last couple of months in particular, the excellent work Irish Life Health are doing to support their clients as they look to, first of all, transition to remote working, and then transition to the, back to the workplace as well. So really great to have Jacinta and the team on board. And Jacinta is actually online and in the chat today. So if you have any questions for Jacinta, you can pop them in there, or pop them in the Q&A, and I'll pass them on to Jacinta and the team directly after the webinar. Big shout out as well to AJ Products. So AJ have been with me since last year, and we traveled nationwide at our event series last year. And AJ they're a small company. Historically, they would have dealt with a lot of kind of workplace furniture, canteen furniture, that kind of thing. So needless to say, it was a serious setback over the last couple of months. Now, they did have a small amount of home office furniture, and they've been really kind of innovative in the last couple of months, and they've significantly increased the amount of home office furniture that they have available. So definitely check it out. It's great quality products, and I'm delighted to say that the guys have given us, for everyone watching and for everyone in the audience, a nice little discount there on your home office furniture. And I believe the way it works is it's like an increasing discount. So the more you spend, the more of a discount you get. So thanks to Paul, to Tanya, and all the team at AJ Products for that. Now, that's enough from me in terms of an introduction. I think it's time for our attendees to get off the bench and come onto the pitch a little bit here. So I've got a couple of poll questions to get us started. So they should be coming up on your screen right now. Now, for anyone watching the recording, I don't believe these questions will come up, so I'll just talk everyone through them. The first question is, what best describes your role or your position? And there's a few options there, so that'll help us get an understanding of who's on the call. Question number 2 is, to the best of my knowledge, I will be working remotely until at least 2021. Maybe you're returning to the workplace. Maybe you've already returned. And for some, maybe you've never actually left the workplace as well. So just to give us an indication, something that can inform our conversation today. And then the final question there is, over the last few months, my employer has, and this is a multiple choice one, by the way, you can pick more than one, been communicating updates regularly, been conducting regular surveys, placed an increased focus on well-being, or pretty much none of the above. So I'm seeing people are certainly getting off the bench there. We're already at about 75% of those that are in attendance have voted, so that's fantastic. So I'll give maybe just another 30 seconds or so for people to answer those questions. And then we will get going with our panel discussion on the return to the workplace. So I'm delighted to be joined today with a wonderful panel. We have Tracy Carey from Indeed, we have Fiona Taylor from Kuna and Nagel, and we have Rob Sutton from Sky Ireland. And I have their wonderful CVs in front of me here, and I could go through them and introduce them myself, but it's, reading off a script can be a little bit boring, so I might ask each panelist to introduce themselves in just one moment. So we're at the 86%. So 86% of people have voted. I think that's pretty good. I'm gonna shut down the voting now. We're at 87%. So I think that's pretty good. So you should be able to, let me see if I can share those results on screen. So I think over 50% of people that are tuning in are in the HR field. We've got some senior leaders, but a few wellbeing leaders in there as well, which is great. So it looks like the majority of people are certainly internal within organizations, and we have a few external then service providers. So you're all very welcome. Question number 2 was, to the best of my knowledge, I will be, and the vast majority are returning to the workplace before the end of the year. So more than 50% of people are returning before the end of the year. But a good chunk there, a quarter of people are will be working remotely until at least 2021. So I imagine that, I mean, that number is up on I imagine people that would have been traditionally working remotely. So that's a significant number. And about 13% have already returned to the workplace, and a small percentage never actually left the workplace. Okay, so it looks like our employers are doing a really good job here. Over the last few months, 88% of employers have been communicating regularly, which is fantastic. That's great to hear. And the 43% have been conducting surveys. And I'm delighted to see there. So we have almost 60% have placed an increased focus on well-being. So delighted to see that. Back in April, when I hosted the first webinar in the series, I asked the question, has well-being moved up the priority list as a result of COVID-19? And there was an overwhelming response that yes, it had. So it's great to see that organizations are really backing this up then with an increased focus there. Okay, brilliant. So thank you for everyone that participated there in those results. I will share those afterwards. So we're going to talk about the return to the workplace. Tracy from Indeed, I kind of got I think this was really made real to me, this whole scenario, this situation, when I heard that Indeed we're asking everyone to work from home very early in March, as I think many of our listeners would as well. Can you maybe first of all tell us a little bit about yourself and what the last few months have been like for you at Indeed?
Okay, hi Brian, and hi everyone. Well, I joined Indeed in November 2019. I seem to have spent my first 6 months moving around a fair bit, because we, at that point, my team was based in our Stephen's Green office. And then, of course, we had our new beautiful building down in Capitol Dock. We moved down there in February. And then very quickly, within a month, we were all working from home. So that was quite interesting. It's been challenging. We're a relatively new team as well. So, there's 3 people on my team in Dublin, and we manage benefits for all of the EMEA region. So Indeed Ireland, as most people probably know, is the international headquarters. So, sort of the headquarters for outside of the US. And we've a very large population. We have upwards of 1,200 people in Dublin. So my team manages all of our European benefits. The move to work from home was a very interesting one. We're lucky, because of the nature of our business, that it wasn't a very difficult one in many ways, because we're very much an online business. We'd be classed as a tech business. So everybody has a company laptop. We use Zoom, for all of our meetings. We work across borders a lot. So most of our population would be very well used to working in virtual teams. But I think what happened with the very beginning is that, we were aware that, obviously COVID-19 was growing. It was becoming very much, it was growing into a pandemic, I suppose, at that stage. And we first closed a couple of our offices for, out of an abundance of caution at the beginning, during February, because we had travel from office to office, and we, there was, we weren't really quite sure if there had been any exposure. It turned out there hadn't been. But that made us very aware that exposure grows when people move from office to office. So the first thing we did was that we actually, we curtailed our business travel. Before we asked anybody to work from home, we asked specific employees to work from home, and we curtailed all business travel, particularly international business travel. We then cancelled any of our near-term Indeed hosted events. So, be they client hosting events, sort of client meetings, or some of the larger sort of job seeker events that we'd host. And then on the 3rd of March, we made the decision to ask all of our employees globally to work from home for an indefinite period. Obviously, none of us knew how long things were going to go on. So that was an interesting move. That was our Chief HR Officer, Paul Wolf, sent an email out to every employee asking them to work from home. And then we worked through things from there. So I think what we would say, and I think everybody else would agree, that we're all now taking part in a global work from home experiment that is just unprecedented.
It absolutely is, yeah. And I think you have some interesting statistics as well that you're gathering at the moment, which you might share with us a little bit later. But that really does set the scene very nicely, Tracy. So thank you for that. As you said, you were probably in a good position. You were kind of set up for remote working, being a tech business effectively. I guess one company that might be quite different in that regard then would be Kuehne and Nagel. So Fiona, I might bring you in here on that. And you have an interesting story yourself. You only joined the company pretty much around the time, was it a week before things kind of started to kick off, and you took on the role of HR director there?
Yeah. So Brian, thank you for the invite today, and delighted to get the opportunity to share my and Kuehne Nagel story. Just for people that might be familiar with Kuehne Nagel, we're freight forwarding and logistics, the leading freight forward and logistics provider in Ireland. And I suppose I joined just at the beginning of March after leaving the financial services industry, not knowing, I suppose, how serious and how seriously COVID-19 was going to impact Ireland and the workplace in Ireland. It was a really interesting time because I was only physically in the office for about 2 weeks before we made the decision to start reducing capacity in the office, so assigning people to work from home. And I suppose for me personally, it gave an opportunity, really joining a new company, to get stuck in and really, I don't know, people on the call, when you move jobs, that's your fear, I suppose, in the first few weeks. How do I quickly add value, and how do I prove myself and get to know people and them get to know me? So it gave me an opportunity, a silver lining, I suppose, to do that, and to lead the people plan, shall we say, around COVID. Saying people plan now makes it sound like it was all very planned out. It wasn't. A lot of it was figure it out as we go. But what we did was, before the actual lockdown, we made that decision to reduce capacities in the office, and we engaged with employees to understand their personal circumstances, to understand kind of who was most vulnerable in our organisation, and that's how we prioritised early on who would work from home. And then, obviously, as things got more serious, we moved on from there to increase the numbers of people working from home. We would be considered as an essential service under the government roadmap, because we'd be responsible for ensuring continuity in terms of product, pharmaceuticals, food, transporting and getting in and out of Ireland. So we couldn't have everybody working from home. We landed at about 65% of employees working from home, with then our warehouse employees, colleagues, having still to come into the office to process the transactions for our customers, and also then kind of skeleton staff in the office in our kind of clerical workers in terms of processing of orders, etc. But I know we'll probably get more into it later on in some of the specific measures we took, but that it was an interesting first few weeks to kind of get initiated into the organisation and be involved in, I suppose, those key and important decisions around protecting the well-being of employees, most of which I hadn't even met at that stage. But it was great to have the support of the organisation, I suppose, behind me, to make those decisions and be involved in doing so.
Very good. Yeah, and I can imagine it was certainly a different experience starting in that kind of environment. And as you kind of mentioned to us earlier, even when you were in the first week or two, when you were starting to meet some people, you couldn't even shake their hands. I think you'd introduced that protocol where there was no shaking hands. So that must have been particularly unusual in just starting a role. But as you said, a great opportunity to get stuck in as well. I mean, there was nothing else for it but to get stuck in, really, was there?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's only when you're told you can't do something like shake hands that you really realize the importance of that human connection. So that, I didn't realize until I couldn't shake someone's hand. You kind of have to then take a step back and think, okay, so how do I connect with people? And again, I know we'll probably get into it later on.
Excellent. Okay, thank you for that, Fiona. And again, another business, another different sector with different challenges, Sky Ireland. So welcome, Rob Sutton, HR business partner at Sky Ireland. Of course, you have, as well as been in a different sector, you have the additional challenge of a very large call center there, Rob.
Yeah, hi Brian, hi guys. Absolutely. So the Ireland business, we've just under 1,000 people. The vast majority of them are based in call center roles in our head office. I guess kind of from the point of view of how our business responded, very similar to the Indeed guys. We put a ban on travel initially, then kind of not bringing any external people into our offices. Similarly to Putinagel, we're classified as an essential service because of the telcos and broadband products that we provide to people. But it became apparent to us pretty quickly that we were going to have to pivot to a working from home environment. That created a number of challenges, not least the fact that I guess around about 600 of our staff weren't equipped to work from home. So they didn't even have laptops. So from the point of view of getting that kind of infrastructure, the tech in place that people needed, our facilities guys did a sterling piece of work to kind of turn that round really, really quickly. And, I guess kind of what we did was what probably would have taken us 3 years in a normal environment, we had to do in about 3 weeks to enable the whole workforce to work from home. So, I think it's while it's been really, really challenging, it's been fascinating from a people perspective. We were talking before the call, and kind of saying the types of things that we're doing from a work perspective, we never thought that we do in our careers. So it really, really is fascinating.
Excellent. Yeah, and a thought experiment, if you like, as well. And the statistics that come out of all of this will be really interesting. And I think, and Rob, you were saying to me, you had to adapt extremely quickly. And the large call center, of course, a lot of those guys and girls in the call center would have perhaps been working from home, from kitchen tables, maybe with parents around, cooking dinner, with siblings, trying to do some homework as well. Particularly challenging for those.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I guess kind of what we found was that we made the decision to enable everyone to work from home as quickly as possible. And then realized that we almost kind of had to loop back then and make sure that, process, procedures, all that type of stuff was in place. So what we did was we kind of established a working from home committee effectively. So sponsored by one of our directors, and then we kind of had 8 different work streams that we were addressing through that. So health and safety being one, compliance as a regulated business, that was another really important one, engagement. So how are we kind of keeping our people engaged? Management and performance, facilities and technology, another one, training and recruitment, and then not last but not least, health and well-being as a kind of distinct work stream. So we've just found that kind of structure has worked really, really well, because it enabled us to respond to the initial crisis first of all, then kind of take a more medium-term approach around, okay, how do we kind of fill the gaps? And now we're starting to look at things more kind of strategically from the point of view of, you know, future ops model, what that looks like with working from home, all that type of stuff.
Great stuff, yeah, and I like the way you approached it, and it was kind of similar in your approach with the project you submitted to Trinity, to Tangent, for the students. It was focusing on the short, medium, and long term, and kind of you gave it that approach. So thank you for sharing that. And you touched on a good point there. For anyone watching in that's looking for the specific government guidelines, which we encourage everyone to follow, the absolute best place to go to, one-stop shop, is hsa.ie for your specific guidelines. And it's great to have these conversations here today to hear what other companies are doing and how they're adapting. But for your specific guidelines, which I know all of the companies here are also adhering to, it's hsa.ie. So thank you for setting the scene there with that, guys, and kind of introducing us to your businesses and the challenges over the last couple of months. A lot of the questions coming in advance were related to remote working. So we might talk about that for a moment, kind of concentrate on the present. Tracy, is there any kind of, have you introduced any additional maybe well-being supports for employees as they work from home? And are there any interesting or unique ways that you've been able to engage them? You're on mute there, Tracy.
Classic webinar mistake. Yeah, well, I suppose because our work from home was, you know, our global work from home was implemented very quickly. You know, I think we caught up pretty fast, and we dealt with that pretty quickly. So initially we dealt with all the practicalities. So we had to change, say, our IT service support services to, which had been largely an in-person support. You know, we have support centres in every office. We had to move those online. And our IT support teams were fantastic. They have a virtual office every morning for an hour or so, and individuals can log in. You know, so there were the practicalities like that, and, you know, making sure that we had the infrastructure in place for, you know, to support the increase in virtual meetings and sort of the global increase in virtual meetings. We use Zoom as our platform. You know, so, you know, we needed to make sure that, you know, we updated all of our, you know, the security protocols there, which were done actually by Zoom, which was great. And, you know, sort of very simple things that had to be thought about, like, you know, how much physical post do we receive in the offices, and who will pick that up, and how will that get distributed, because our offices are closed, so employees can't go in. So, you know, we've worked that out with facilities teams and things like that. So from a well-being perspective, you know, one of the biggest concerns would be making sure that employees still feel connected, and that there is still a level of sort of, you know, team collaboration. So the first thing we did was we started providing ongoing transparent updates. So we have a weekly Q&A with our senior leadership team in the US. Which is incredibly useful, and I have to say, I've never felt more like I'm familiar enough with my CEO to invite him out for a pint. But that's what that weekly Q&A does, and they are very openly and transparently answering questions from employees on a weekly basis, and I think that's helped everybody globally. We're also in the process of enhancing our employee assistance program. So we're implementing a new global provider, whereas sort of initially we had sort of providers in individual countries offering slightly different services. So that will be something that we're launching pretty soon. We introduced a reimbursement for employees to help them set up their workspace at home to make it comfortable. And, you know, sort of I've got my nice little home office here now, but then, you know, I have the space to do that, which is a consideration. But, you know, so we gave people an allowance to set up their home offices, and that was quite flexible. You know, it wasn't just chairs and desks. You know, you could subscribe to a mindfulness app, or anything that makes your work from home experience more comfortable was reimbursable there. And we've been very conscious as well of, you know, we had a lot of on-site fitness programs, you know, which a lot of us here do. So we now have virtual fitness programs. We've set up different Slack channels, say for, you know, there's a work from home Slack channel where you can post your work from home views. And, you know, we have, each office has a channel where you can see the updated sort of events that are happening for your office. So we have virtual fitness classes, virtual HIIT classes, which I know you'll appreciate, Brian, virtual yoga, virtual mindfulness, and they're all working really well. They're very well received. So we're running regular engagement sort of checks, if you like, sort of we're monitoring that to see how things are going. And we have, you know, we're very lucky to have a fantastic employee experience team who are managing all of that.
Fantastic. Yeah, so you've got a lot going on there.
Yeah, we do. Sometimes we even have a little bit of time in the day for some work.
Very good. I love the piece about the kind of mentioning, you know, you'd be comfortable now asking the CEO out for a pint. I've kind of heard that a bit from a few people within organizations, even though we're all remote, certainly for now, they've actually never felt closer to the senior leadership team. They feel a bit of a connection, or they have access to them maybe on a weekly basis, as you mentioned there, with these kind of town halls that are virtual, a bit like perhaps like this forum. So great, you know, closer access, if you like, and open communication channels, which is a real positive. So thank you for sharing that. And Fiona, it might be a little different for you there. You had maybe a higher percentage of people that weren't able to work remotely. But are you doing anything interesting to keep both the remote and your current in-person employees, if you like, the warehouse and the drivers, engaged at this moment in time?
Yeah, so we I suppose we looked at things from two fronts. We looked at what we were currently doing that was working well pre-COVID, and how could we translate that into the new way of working, you know, so how can we make some of the activity that we were previously doing translate across virtual mediums. And we also looked at, you know, what new or what additional can we do. So when we look at well-being and engagement well-being, we kind of look at it holistically. So we look at it, you know, from a financial, a physical, an emotional perspective. And in those areas, for us, when COVID hit, you know, we knew the number one priority, particularly in the industry that we work in, that, you know, short-time working, layoffs, all that would not be uncommon. We knew that job security for our employees and hence the linkage to their well-being, obviously, was going to be our number one priority, and doing everything within our power to ensure that we provide that job security for people, and letting our people know that we, you know, temporary layoffs or short time would be absolutely a last resort for us, and thankfully we didn't end up in a situation that we had to do that. So providing that financial security was important for us, and also indirectly in a financial circumstance. So what we looked at was, in our wider benefits, how could we make sure that people were getting as much money in their pockets as possible, because we don't know their broader family situation. A partner might have lost their job during the downturn and the pandemic. So things like where people, say, had roles or sales people that were on the road, you know, the BIK on the company cars, you know, ensuring that we made them aware of the updated revenue rules, where we had people in savings schemes, giving them the option to pause or postpone the savings scheme, little things like that. were important that we did. We also kind of utilized and refreshed people's awareness of the different benefits they had in the company, particularly around the area of health. So pulling on our health insurers to ensure that people knew what was available through those, you know, webinars, etc. So kind of pulling on our existing providers to roll out additional kind of supports to people. We looked at that. On the other side of things then, in terms of kind of emotional and mental health, kind of that area of well-being, we've held, and again, these would be normal things we would do, but we kind of might be timing of different times of the year. So we did them at this time of the year instead, webinars and workshops around mental health online. We also had a training program that was planned for much later in the year around customer care, that the modules were very aligned with kind of resilience, empathy, connecting with your customer, understanding others' perspectives, and they were bite-sized learning, half an hour team sessions. So we accelerated those to you know, starting in April time, and we've been rolling those out over Zoom team sessions, but not only rolling out the training, but bringing the team back together a week or two later to kind of see how they have applied the skills they've learned in those training modules. And again, it gives another way for people to connect, but really around content that was originally designed to enhance the customer experience, but it actually has helped employees, you know, through the topics of connecting with each other during this time. So there's some of the things kind of in the area of well-being. But in engagement then, we did, I'm sure, like a lot of companies have been doing, you know, enhanced communications, things like one that went down really, really well, and such a simple thing to do. We created a children's activity book. I don't know if other organizations have done it, and we did this in the run up to Easter, and it was like a book that we themed it around our industry, so that there was the connection for the children of our employees with, you know, the logistics industry. But there was puzzles in it, there was little challenges, there was colouring, you know, pages to colour in, and that went down really, really well. So loads of little things like that. But to kind of close off on this question, for me, the biggest single thing that we've done is that we've made sure that people managers are communicating with their teams. You know, so communicating in terms of cascading the messages from the company, but also communicating in on a level to ensure that their teams are okay, and engaging with them and linking in with them regularly to see how they're doing, to see is something not working for them in terms of the working from home arrangement, and you know, just making sure that if we have employees that are struggling, that we know about it and that we're actually supporting them in the right way on an individual basis, rather than a one-size-fits-all approach.
Excellent.
So that's some of the things we're doing. Yeah,
lots of great stuff there, and you know, some really thoughtful stuff in there, really genuine. So lots of we really love the creative idea of the kids' activity book in particular. And that's a wonderful idea as well, because we're all kind of parenting. Well, a lot of us are parenting from work, I guess. So that's kind of really creative. But, you know, I'm not surprised to hear that, because I would have worked with your predecessor, Gary McCabe, for quite a few years. And I've always been impressed with the kind of almost the creativity and the Kuhn and Nagel, kind of the well-being initiatives, some of the really interesting financial kind of debt management stuff previously, and hearing just some updates from you there as well. So sounds like you're doing great work there. So, and creative as always, which I love to hear, based on top of the foundation of the kind of the mental health and the emotional support that you touched on as well. So really great to hear that. So thank you for sharing that, Fiona. Yeah. Rob, you've kind of touched on this one already. It sounds like you've created a stream already for health and well-being in your response to this. So yeah, how are you what kind of additional supports maybe are you putting in place as a part of that?
Yeah, so, you know, I think, as you know, Brian, we kind of have quite an evolved health and wellbeing plan as is. And, you know, as the two other guys have said, one of the key thing for us has been that comms piece, and really making sure people are aware of the resources that we have and that are available to them. We've worked very hard with our healthcare provider Leia as well to move our offering 100% online. So similar to the other organisations, we would have done stuff like the HIIT classes, the yoga classes, all that type of stuff. But making those offerings kind of fit for purpose in the environment that we're working in. Another thing that we also looked at was kind of upskilling our managers from the point of view of managing people remotely, because it's kind of a different set of challenges, as opposed to maybe a team leader who has 10 or 15 people that he can walk up and down the bay and kind of talk to on a really regular basis. So it's just giving those guys the kind of the tools to be able to support their teams. And as I say, just that whole kind of comms piece and putting structures in place from the point of view of our Ireland Managing Director connecting with people on a weekly basis, our Ops Director connecting with people on a weekly basis, and then making sure that that's two-way, so it's not just top down, but we're able to kind of feed back in people's concerns. Something else that we've done, I know a lot of organisations have done it, is we've kind of done regular pulse survey check-ins. So in kind of business as usual, we'd survey our people twice a year from an employee engagement perspective. But what we've done is kind of moved to a 6-week cycle of a COVID-19 response survey. So it's really, really short, 4 or 5 questions, but it's just kind of given us really, really good both qualitative and quantitative data that's kind of helping us with the decisions that we're making as a business.
Fantastic, yeah, and I'm not surprised to hear you're doing those surveys, those regular surveys as well. I first got to know what the Work Sky Ireland were doing, I guess probably through Aoifeann Muraku, the head of HR there, who spoke at a very early in-person Workplace Wellbeing Ireland event. And I think you've really grown your metrics and the sophistication of those metrics that you're gathering since then, and that was very evident in the project you submitted to Trinity as well. So great work on that. So great for that update. Thanks, Rob. And actually, Debbie on the Q&A there is just highlighting, and Fiona, you mentioned this earlier as well. While we're on the subject of remote working, the government just, I think it was this morning, just launched a public consultation on remote work guidelines. So I might share that in the chat. Or Debbie, if you want to share it in the chat as well, I don't know if you have already, you've certainly shared it in the Q&A. So thank you for that. So we can all, employers and employees, we can input into that conversation there. So great questions there on the remote work. So I do have one more poll question, which is related to that. So let me see if I can just pull up that poll question now very quickly. Related to remote working or flexible working, I think I've called it. So just a very simple question. I would prefer to work remotely full-time, go back to the workplace full-time, a mix of the above, or I don't have a choice given my role. So there are the options. So so thus far we've looked at kind of the challenges, the initial challenges, and how we all adapted. We've looked at the present situation, if you like, the remote working. So I'd like to come now, we'll look at the survey results now in just a moment. But then I'd like to come to the plan for the future and that return to the workplace. So just give me one moment and we'll just concentrate on that. So we have a huge percentage have voted really quickly there. So I'll just give another 10 seconds before I shut this one down. But I think we have a clear winner, and I'm not surprised to hear that. It's my own preference would be as well a mix of the above. Maybe a day or two at home, and then the rest would in the workplace. And an overwhelming, I don't know if that's coming up on your screen there. I'll share those results now. I think, are they shared? There they show. Chat keeps popping up. So there, I'm sharing the results now. So the mix, so about 80% pretty much are saying they'd like a mix of remote plus work in the office. So I don't, or the workplace. I don't think the workplace is going anywhere just yet. But look at that number there, only 5% want to go back full time. So I think that's definitely one. I think every organization on this call is certainly listening to that. But anyone that's not should certainly take note. And there's 10%, so 1 in every 10 would like to work remotely full time, and 5% don't have a choice. So, okay. Brilliant. Thank you for sharing that feedback. That's really interesting. So on to that return to the workplace. And Tracy, I know you don't have the finalized details or anything like that. It's all being worked on at present. But I think you do have some interesting statistics that you're gathering and some trends that you're noticing in this area.
We do, exactly. So from our own perspective, we have a return to work task force who are managing our return to work and our return to offices. So they're very busy working on that at the moment. But what we can share, because of the nature of our business, is some of the trends that we're seeing as a market leader in the world of work, if you like. So the first thing, obviously, as your survey showed, is that return to remote working is here to stay. What we're seeing on the Indeed website, on searches on the website, is that there has been very much a shift towards remote work and a desire to work remotely. So the word remote, is being used as sort of a search key, quite largely, particularly, it's really soared since the pandemic took hold. And what we're seeing with that is that sort of with companies advertising remote positions or considering, advertising positions remotely, it broadens the talent pool. So if you've got difficulty filling certain positions, you're no longer that location specific. So obviously you're still going to be country specific. So if you look at Ireland, Indeed is based in Dublin. That's our only, we have 2 physical offices in Dublin. We can now hire anywhere around the country. And that makes a huge difference. So I think it also helps then with, diversity and with inclusion. We can appeal to people, and every employer can, if remote positions are available, can appeal to people across generations, across geographies, across backgrounds. And it's far more inclusive. I mean, I think I'm wearing my Access Indeed t-shirt today, which is, it's one of our inclusion IRGs, which is all about access, making workplaces accessible to people of all different needs. So remote positions might be a lot more accessible for people with mobility issues or things like that. So I'd see that as, certainly a very, very positive. But also what we are seeing as well is that remote working, permanent remote working is not for everyone. And we'd anticipate seeing, a more hybrid system with people working from home a couple of days a week. Our own internal surveys are, showing that kind of preference as well, as I say, as everybody else has done. But I suppose with the downfall of traditional working, traditional office working, you need to consider the negative side, if you like, or the potential negative side of remote working. So you need to be particularly conscious of making sure employees feel included, that they don't feel isolated, and they feel engaged with their teams, and feel connected and valued as part of a team. And I suppose there are certain teams that will find remote working more challenging. Like I can imagine, I'm not in a customer facing role as such, although my internal, clients are the employees of Indeed. But if I was, on calls all day to customers, there's sometimes I'm sure I'd prefer my team to be physically around us, where, if you're having a bad day, you can just go and grab a coffee together and, chat about it and laugh it off. So, people in particular roles might feel more isolated in a remote working environment. So I'm just looking to see, I'm scrolling through all of our different research. I think that's sort of more or less it, apart from the fact that I am being reminded that I forgot to mention our U Days. So as part of our wellbeing initiative with everybody working from home during a global pandemic, and that part of it is very important. And indeed, we've introduced a company holiday globally one day every month for the rest of 2020.
Wow.
So that's also part of our wellbeing strategy, being mindful of the fact that we are working from home during a global pandemic. As you've said yourself, people are parenting from work.
Yeah.
So there's all of those different pressures that are on people at the moment. So we've had a very positive response to our U Days. I think next Friday is one, where the entire company globally is not at work. It's a company holiday. Everybody's at home. So, particularly for those of us whose clients are internal, it's a day when it's not like a regular day off, that you're taking from your annual leave. It's a day when your inbox is not filling up because everybody internally is on a day off. So that's working very well.
That's nice, and that is generous. Like that's a day a month for the remainder of the year. That's I've heard a couple of companies doing a day here and there maybe, but yeah, so a day a month. That's very nice now for the remainder of the year.
Yes, I approve.
You give it the green light. There was one question in the Q&A. I don't know if you'll be able to answer this, but it was around the hiring and recruitment process. And just a question have you noticed an increase, a decrease? Are people finding it challenging to recruit, given that you can't do the face-to-face interviews anymore, or is it almost business as usual, given that you're already a tech company effectively?
Well, no, we face the same challenges as everybody else with onboarding people virtually.
Yeah.
Sort of in the previous world, in a previous life, before the lockdown, we onboarded all of our new hires within Europe in Dublin. So we had an onboarding day where we invited everybody to an onboarding session, and we introduced them to the company. We got them set up on their laptops, with all of their logins, etc. And that all of those things, you're meeting your manager and your team face to face, and all of that is very challenging to take online.
Yeah.
But we have done a fair bit of that, and we have done a lot of virtual onboarding. Personally, I can't speak to how well, how easy IT find it, because obviously they're having to ship laptops and everything to people, and onboard them virtually that way. From a HR perspective, we're still conducting the same sessions that we've always conducted, but virtually, and we're assisting managers to help sort of onboard people virtually as well. We have a HR director for the EMEA region based in Dublin, who herself was onboarded virtually. So she has personal experience of it, but it does make things more challenging, but it is possible, and it certainly hasn't. It's made us think more carefully, probably, and the same with sort of with our clients. You have to think a little bit more carefully about how you're going to onboard people, but it's possible, if not ideal.
Well said. Yeah, challenging but possible. I guess maybe 6 months ago we would have said it was impossible, but now we know it is actually possible. There's an awful lot that is possible. Brilliant. Thank you for that, Tracy. It might be a little different for you again, Fiona. You've already got people that haven't really left the workplace, but for those that you're transitioning back, or you're welcoming more people back into the warehouses and more drivers back, what's the plan, or how are things coming along?
Yeah, so as I said, we have about 65% of our colleagues at the minute working from home. So we all progressing well as it has been doing in the past few weeks. We intend to start phasing people back from the beginning of August, and in a reduced capacity, in terms of we're not going to fill up our offices with all colleagues quickly. We're going to phase it over a number of months, and we're not at this stage, we're not committing to an exact time frame, because we want to see how it works, and we want to learn as we go along. One of the things that was really important to us was that employees had an input into when they return to the office, and also that we're aware of what their future kind of way of working is in terms of their desired future way that they work, whether that be combination of from home or starting early and finishing early, starting later, finishing later, or reducing working hours fully. So we've sent all our colleagues a survey asking them around their ability to return to the office in August or from August onwards, and also asking them what their desired future way of working would be, and giving them every option to choose from available. And we've asked all employees to fill out that survey, including their name, so that we can actually have, rather than us guess and assume what people want, that we actually have real data that we can use, and that we can actually plan our ways of working into the future. I see one of the attendees there was asking in the comments about a 4-day working week. That's, you know, the consolidated 5 days into 4, and is that an, you know, do employees use that and see that as a positive? We currently don't have it in our organisation, but in the last organisation I worked in, only earlier this year, we trialled it in a particular function, and we saw a 12% productivity increase in that working pattern. So I'm absolutely convinced that, you know, arranging work in alternative ways does produce results, and we have seen it even through COVID. So we want to design our work into the future to facilitate different ways of working. I personally don't see it as a benefit. I know, again, I saw another comment there asking, do companies see it as part of a benefit package in the future to attract talent? It's not a benefit. It's not a differentiator in my view. It's the way the world has been before COVID. COVID is just reinforcing that it works. So my view on it is that if companies don't get with the program, shall we say, in terms of alternative ways of working, they'll be left behind, and it'll actually be a detractor rather than just the norm, in terms of employees now expect to have flexibility in their working ways. So that's, I'm conscious of time, Brian, so I won't go on any further.
Great point. I agree with you 100% on that, by the way. It really is a different, well, it shouldn't be seen as a benefit. It is the way, it is going to be the way. I spoke previously about, certainly in the States, there was a movement growing called results only work environments, where it's, you know, the employee decides when and how and where they do their work, and it's all about results. And it's here. It sounds like you had a very interesting trial there yourselves. There's lots of kind of flexible working policies and arrangements around there at the moment. And as you said, I think companies that are not at least looking into this in some way, shape or form, depending on the roles, of course, then they're probably going to be left behind. Yeah, very well said. Yeah, I am conscious of time. I'm going to go for another couple of minutes, just 2 or 3 more minutes. If people need to drop off, I understand. This is being recorded, so you will be able to catch up. But Rob, I do want to finish with yourself there, if I could. And again, same question to you. What's the plan for the return to the workplace? Is the call center going to come back in its previous form?
I think it's safe to say it won't be coming back in its previous form, but you know, from the point of view of return to site, anything that we're doing it's slow and gradual, and similar to the other guys, being led by government advice. We have a small cohort that are actually back in the office already, who for whatever reason they weren't able to work from home, and the facilities guys have just kind of done a fantastic job in basically transforming our building. So you know, we've instigated mandatory e-learning for anybody coming back on site. So from the point of view of health and safety, and making sure that they're familiar with the guidelines, what they can do, what they can't do, all that type of stuff. We then kind of had to put in a one-way system, just the way that our office is laid out. So there's kind of really clear signage all around the office as to kind of where people can and can't go. And then we have a shared building, so we're in with the guys from Amazon. So there's actually temperature checks for everybody coming in the building through the kind of the front door, and a kind of a whole process around that. So I guess kind of what we've done is put the infrastructure in place for those that are coming back and have had to come back for various reasons. And then kind of when we get to the next phase of bringing more people back, that'll be really slow, really gradual, and as I say, led by government advice. So I think the news today is really interesting, and then kind of see what comes out of that over the coming weeks.
Absolutely, yeah. So looking forward to hearing what comes out of that. We've just come up to the hour. Panelists, I'd like to give you one last chat. You want to make one more final point, or a question that I have, and it's come in on the chat and it's coming in the Q&A there is, and it came in earlier actually as well in the last few days, is what is the future of workplace well-being? What will that look like? So, on a nice easy question there, but maybe if you want to give one final point, one final comment on that before we wrap things up. Don't all jump in at once now.
I would say for me, and it has always been, is about caring about your employees and actually knowing what's important to them, and not having a one-size-fits-all approach for everybody. And that will be how I have always looked at well-being. Having enough policies and benefits there to meet the masses, but that when it really counts, that the individual enough to support them in whatever way they need.
Okay, so listening, understanding the needs and wants. Yeah, excellent.
I think from my perspective, what this kind of has done it's almost like re-emphasize and re-highlight the importance of workplace well-being and health and well-being, and I think that'll become a key differentiator for organizations. So the organizations that do a really good job of looking after their employees, kind of it'll, from an employee value proposition, I think that's really important.
Excellent. Thank you, Rob.
Yeah, I'd agree with both Fiona and Rob. And I think, the very key thing is to listen to your employees and not sort of second guess what they need. So constantly keeping the lines of communication open and transparent communication, and then answering those needs. So, I think everybody on this call takes a very flexible approach to well-being and to the benefits that support well-being, and we have we've various different sessions coming up. We survey our employees after, and our colleagues after each session, but it is very much about listening and being aware, particularly if we move to, as the world of work is changing, that we appreciate that the demands that people feel from that change are also changing, and that the supports that they require are also changing, and that sort of there are things that you can do virtually, but I think the very key thing, as Fiona pointed out, is to actually show that you're listening and to care, to show that empathy.
Fantastic. Lovely way to finish up there. So thank you to everyone. I just want to have one or two slides just to wrap up and to say a thank you or two, but that was a lovely way to finish up. So thank you to all the panel, to Tracy, Fiona and Rob for that. So this was our wonderful panel. Huge thank you to Tracy, to Rob, to Fiona for that wonderful discussion today. There's lots of questions and lots of items in the chat that I didn't get to. If there's anything, I'll go through them all. If I can send anything, a reply to any, I will. And I might even, if there's questions directly for Tracy, for Fiona or Rob, I will pass them on as well. If you'd like to hear more interesting conversations, you're going to go straight into another conversation over your lunchtime, go to workwellpodcast.com and check that out for some interesting conversations. If you want to partner and sponsor season 2 of the podcast, let me know, drop me a line. Oh yeah, and so something interesting I'm working on over the next month or two as well is the Workwell Institute. So watch this space for that, coming soon for all your online training needs. And a big thank you. So no, I'm always forgetting some people. So huge thanks to our panelists, Tracy, Fiona and Rob, for their wonderful contributions. We really could have spoken for quite a while there. So thank you guys for giving up your time and for sharing so much today. Big shout out again to my partners, to Irish Life Health, Jacinta and the team, to AJ Products, for all your great support. So thank you again. Again, if anyone has any questions for Jacinta or for AJ, drop them in the Q&A. I'll leave it open for the next few minutes. You can send it there and I'll pass it on directly to them. And last but not by no means least, thanks so much to everyone who tuned in, for contributing on the chat, for asking questions and for engaging with all the polls. So the community is about you, it's for you. So thank you so much for your continued support. So stay safe, wash your hands, wear a face mask, and be kind to your loved ones and to your colleagues and to your friends. And we'll talk to you on the next episode. Take care, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Bye, everyone.
Take care. Goodbye.
Bye.